Grandmother's Secret. Chapter 1. The Mysterious Chest. Victoria Wright had always been intrigued by her grandmother's old house. It stood at the edge of a quiet English village, its walls whispering secrets of the past. The house, a grand yet eerie Victorian manor, had been in the Wright family for generations, nestled between sprawling gardens and a dense woodland that cast long shadows at dusk. When her grandmother passed away, Victoria inherited the house, along with a lifetime of memories buried within its walls. It had been years since she last visited, but now, with the summer stretching before her, she decided to spend the season uncovering its mysteries. There was something about the house that called to her, a feeling she couldn't quite explain, an undercurrent of stories waiting to be told. On her first day, Victoria wandered through the grand foyer, where a massive chandelier hung from the ceiling, dust motes swirling in its dim glow. The wooden floors creaked beneath her steps as she explored room after room, each one a trove of forgotten relics. The parlor still smelled faintly of her grandmother's favorite lavender perfume, and the sitting room held books that hadn't been touched in decades. Everything seemed frozen in time, waiting for her to bring it back to life. But it was the attic that truly piqued her curiosity. A narrow staircase led up to a heavy oak door, which groaned in protest as she pushed it open. The attic was dimly lit, with only a single round window allowing streaks of pale afternoon light to filter in. Dust blanketed the floor, and the air smelled of aged wood and forgotten memories. As she stepped further inside, her eyes adjusted to the gloom, revealing old trunks, stacks of yellowed newspapers, and furniture draped in white sheets. Then, in the farthest corner, something unusual caught her eye, a wooden chest, distinct from the others. It was unlike anything she had seen before. The chest was exquisite, adorned with intricate carvings of twisting vines and strange symbols that Victoria didn't recognize. The brass lock at the front was tarnished with time, its once gleaming surface now dulled to a dark patina. A strange sense of anticipation filled her as she traced her fingers over the patterns. The wood was cool to the touch, and as her hand moved over the lid, she noticed a peculiar engraving near the lock, a delicate crest, one that looked vaguely familiar. She frowned. Where had she seen it before? Her heartbeat quickened as she crouched beside the chest, examining it more closely. The craftsmanship was impeccable, the carvings so intricate that they seemed almost alive. Whoever had created this chest had done so with great care and purpose. But what was inside? And why had it been hidden away? She tried lifting the lid, but it wouldn't budge. The lock held fast, its key nowhere in sight. Victoria glanced around the attic, her mind racing with questions. Had her grandmother known about this? Had she hidden something inside? And if so, why? Determined, Victoria spent the next hour searching the attic for a key. She rummaged through drawers, sifted through boxes of old trinkets, and even shook out dusty linens, hoping a small metal key might tumble out. But there was nothing. The chest remained firmly locked, its secrets just out of reach. Frustrated but undeterred, she sat back on her heels and let out a breath. If there was a key, it had to be somewhere in the house. Her grandmother had been a meticulous woman. Surely, she wouldn't have kept something so ornate and important without ensuring its security. Perhaps the answer lay elsewhere, in the study, among her grandmother's personal belongings. As Victoria stood, she glanced at the chest one last time. The carvings seemed to shimmer in the dim light, as if they held a life of their own. A shiver ran down her spine. There was something about this chest, something that felt different from the other antiques in the house. It was as if it was waiting for her. With one last look around the attic, she turned and made her way downstairs. She had a mystery to solve, and something told her this was only the beginning. Chapter 2. Unlocking the Past. Determined to unveil the truth, Victoria searched the house for the key. The very air in the old mansion seemed to hum with anticipation as she combed through drawers, cabinets, and every possible hiding place. Days passed, and frustration grew, until one evening, as the dying embers of the fireplace cast flickering shadows on the walls, she noticed a slight irregularity in the bricks. One seemed looser than the others. Heart pounding, she knelt before the hearth, her fingers scraping against the rough surface as she pried at the brick. With a final tug, it came free, revealing a small cavity within the wall. Nestled inside was a tiny, rusty key wrapped in an old cloth. The fabric was brittle and yellowed with age, and as she carefully unwrapped it, she wondered who had hidden it away so many years ago. A shiver ran down her spine. Could this be what she had been searching for? Clutching the key, she rushed up the narrow attic stairs, her breath coming in quick gasps. The chest sat there, waiting, its ancient wood whispering secrets of the past. She hesitated only a moment before inserting the key into the lock. With a groan, the mechanism gave way, and the lid creaked open. Inside, bundles of letters lay bound with fraying ribbon, their edges curling with time. Faded photographs, their faces ghostly and unfamiliar, peeked from beneath the stacks. But it was the leather-bound journal that truly caught her attention. Its cover was cracked and worn, the initials YM faintly embossed on the surface. Victoria's hands trembled as she opened it. The first page bore an inscription in elegant script. Eleanor Montgomery, 1892. Eleanor Montgomery, her great-grandmother. She turned the page, her pulse quickening as she began to read. August 3rd, 1892. I write this knowing my words may never be read, but I cannot keep these thoughts locked within me any longer. The burden of secrecy has grown too heavy to bear. It began with him, James Calloway. He was unlike anyone I had ever known, his laughter a melody, his touch a forbidden thrill. We met in stolen moments beneath the willow by the river, where the world seemed to pause, granting us brief respite from the chains of expectation. But love, when forbidden, is as dangerous as fire. And I fear we have set an inferno ablaze. Victoria's breath caught. A forbidden love? She turned the pages, scanning the words penned by a woman whose voice had long been silenced by time. August 17th, 1892. My father suspects. He has watched me closely, and I hear his hushed conversations with mother at night. They speak of honor, of duty. They do not understand that love does not heed such constraints. James wishes to run away, to flee to a place where we might be free. But the price of such freedom is steep, and I do not know if I possess the courage to pay it. Victoria's eyes flicked to the photographs, her fingers tracing the faded faces. Could one of these be James Calloway? Who was he to Eleanor? And what had become of their love? She turned another page, her heart pounding. September 5th, 1892. It is over. My father has forbidden me from ever seeing James again. He threatened to ruin him, to destroy everything he holds dear. And so, with tears staining my cheeks, I told James that I could not go with him, that I did not love him. It was a lie, a cruel, necessary lie. He left that night. I have not seen him since. But my suffering is not yet done, for I carry within me the last remnants of our love, a child. Victoria gasped, her fingers tightening around the pages. A child? Did Eleanor have an illegitimate child, one lost to history? Was this the secret that had remained buried for generations? She rifled through the letters, desperate for answers. Some bore James's name, their ink smudged with what might have been tears. Others were unsigned, but the longing in their words was unmistakable. Victoria's mind reeled. If Eleanor had borne a child in secret, what had become of them? Had the truth been erased, hidden away like the key in the fireplace? Determined, she turned back to the journal. October 21st, 1892. I can hide it no longer. My mother knows. She wept for me, but even her sorrow cannot shield me from what comes next. My father has arranged for me to be sent away to give birth in secret. When I return, it will be as though none of this ever happened. But I cannot forget. I will never forget. Victoria closed the journal, her hands shaking. She could feel the weight of Eleanor's pain as if it were her own. A forbidden love, a secret child, a history deliberately obscured. What had happened to that child? And why had no one in the family spoken of it? As she sat there in the dim attic, surrounded by the echoes of the past, Victoria knew one thing with absolute certainty. She had to uncover the rest of the truth. No matter what secrets lay ahead, she was ready to face them. She owed that much to Eleanor, and to the past that had been buried for far too long. Chapter 3. The Darkest Secret. As Victoria read further, the words on the pages chilled her to the bone. Eleanor's lover had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and rumors of foul play had swirled through the village for decades. The journal hinted at a family scandal, one that involved deception, hidden alliances, and perhaps even murder. Digging deeper, Victoria found a letter at the bottom of the chest. It was addressed to Eleanor from a man named James Thornton, dated the night before his disappearance. He begged her to meet him at the old well in the woods, claiming he had uncovered something shocking. But Eleanor had never written back. Had she known what happened to him? Had her family silenced him? The question sent a shiver through Victoria. She could almost hear the whisper of the past in the creaking house around her. The candle beside her flickered violently, as if the air itself trembled at the revelation. She turned back to the journal, scanning the pages for more clues. Eleanor's last entries were more erratic, almost frantic. October 12th, 1893. I am afraid. My heart tells me I should go to James, but my family watches me too closely. Mother knows something. Father is always speaking in hushed tones with Uncle Richard. They know. They know about the letter. October 13th, 1893. James is gone. They told me he ran away. I don't believe them. Not after what I saw last night. There was a lantern's glow in the woods near the well. Then silence. Then, I do not know. I cannot bring myself to write it. I fear I am being watched. Victoria's fingers trembled over the ink-stained page. What had Eleanor seen? Had she witnessed James's murder? The thought sent a chill through her, but she steeled herself. If Eleanor had been silenced, then it was up to her to uncover the truth. She needed to find that well. The next morning, Victoria set out toward the woods, the letter from James safely tucked into her coat pocket. The path was overgrown, the trees standing like silent sentinels, their gnarled branches reaching overhead. Despite the sun filtering through the leaves, an unsettling cold hung in the air. After nearly an hour of searching, she found it, a circular ring of moss-covered stones, its dark depths vanishing into shadow. The old well. Her heart pounded as she approached. She circled the well slowly, searching for anything out of place. A glint of metal caught her eye among the fallen leaves. She crouched and picked up a rusted locket. Carefully, she pried it open. Inside, a tiny portrait of Eleanor and James stared back at her. This was no accident. Someone had been here. Someone had dropped this in a moment of struggle or haste. A sudden noise made her freeze. A snap of a twig. Victoria whirled around, her breath catching. A figure stood at the tree line, partially obscured by the shadows. "Who's there?" she called, her voice stronger than she felt. The figure didn't move. Victoria clenched her fists. "Show yourself." After a long, tense silence, The person finally stepped forward. An older man, his face lined with age and something darker, an old burden. You shouldn't be here, he said gruffly. Why not? Victoria rimandi. Because the past is buried for a reason. The man introduced himself as Samuel Hartley, a lifelong resident of the village. He had known Eleanor, known the stories, and he had known James Thornton. He didn't run away, did he? Victoria asked, gripping the locket tightly. Samuel sighed, looking away. No, he didn't. Victoria's stomach churned. Then what happened to him? Samuel hesitated before speaking, as if dragging the words from a place long sealed away. James uncovered something dangerous about Eleanor's family. They weren't just rich. They were powerful. Too powerful. There were things they would do, had done to keep their secrets hidden. James tried to warn Eleanor, but he was too late. Victoria swallowed hard. What did they do to him? Samuel hesitated. No one knows for sure. But people heard things that night. A struggle near the well. The sound of something heavy being dragged. The next morning, the well was boarded up and James was gone. Victoria's heart raced. You think he's still down there? Samuel looked at the well with a haunted expression. If you really want answers, that's where you should start. Determined, Victoria retrieved a lantern and some rope from the house. She tied the rope to a sturdy tree nearby and tested its strength before lowering herself down. The descent was slow, the damp stone walls closing in around her. When her feet touched the bottom, she raised her lantern. The beam of light fell upon a sight that made her breath hitch, a pile of bones, partially buried beneath years of dirt and debris. And beside them, a rusted pocket watch with the initials JT. James Thornton. Victoria's pulse thundered in her ears. The truth had been hidden here for over a century. Eleanor had known. She had suffered in silence, forced to live with a secret that had shattered her heart. Tears welled in Victoria's eyes as she whispered, You didn't run away, James. I promise. You won't be forgotten. But as she climbed out of the well, she knew this was only the beginning. Eleanor's family had buried their secrets deep, and someone perhaps even now wanted to keep them that way. Chapter 4. The Truth Unearthed. Determined to find answers, Victoria ventured to the old well, now overgrown with ivy. The morning fog clung to the ground as she picked her way through the tangled underbrush, her heart pounding in anticipation. James's words from his letter echoed in her mind, each phrase urging her forward. As she reached the well, the air around her seemed to thicken. The stone structure, long abandoned and covered in moss, loomed before her like a silent guardian of buried secrets. Her fingers trembled as she traced the worn carvings on the well's edge, remnants of a time long past. Something within her told her that this place held the answer she sought. She crouched down, scanning the earth beneath the thick ivy. A glint of metal caught her eye amid the gnarled roots. Brushing away the leaves, she unearthed something small and cold. Her breath hitched as she dug deeper, the damp soil clinging to her hands. Moments later, she held a rusted locket in her palm, the same one James had mentioned in his letter. Her mind raced. How had this locket ended up here? And why had it been hidden so deliberately? Clutching it tightly, she hurried back to the house, her pulse quickening with every step. Once inside, Victoria settled at her desk, carefully prying open the locket. The hinges protested with a rusty squeak before finally relenting. Inside, she found a faded portrait of a woman, her delicate features barely visible beneath the years of grime. Tucked behind the image was a tiny, crumpled note. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the fragile paper, her breath shallow as she struggled to make out the faded ink. The words, though barely legible, confirmed her deepest fears. James, if you find this, know that the truth must come to light. The Wright family hides a terrible sin. They will stop at nothing to keep it buried. Be careful. Eh? Victoria's stomach twisted into knots. Who was ill? And what had James discovered that had cost him his life? Her mind whirled with possibilities. She needed to know more. Grabbing the journal and letters James had left behind, she spread them across the table, searching for connections. Page after page, she traced James's discoveries, his growing suspicions about the Wright family, his quiet investigations, his increasingly frantic warnings. The name Eleanor Wright appeared repeatedly in his writings. Could she be? And if so, what role had she played in this mystery? Victoria turned to the town archives, combing through old records and newspapers. What she uncovered sent a chill down her spine. In 1892, Eleanor Wright had vanished without a trace. Official reports claimed she had eloped, but rumors suggested a different story, one of betrayal and violence. The last person seen with her? Edgar Wright, her own brother. Victoria's blood ran cold. Edgar Wright had been a powerful figure in the town, known for his ruthless business dealings and iron grip on the family estate. If James had uncovered the truth about Eleanor's disappearance, it explained why he had been silenced. A sudden noise outside jolted Victoria from her thoughts. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Someone was approaching the house. Heart pounding, she quickly stashed the locket and notes in a drawer, then reached for the small revolver James had kept in his desk. The front door creaked open, and a shadow loomed in the doorway. "You shouldn't be digging into the past, Miss Clark," a deep voice intoned. Victoria turned to face the intruder, her grip tightening on the revolver. The man before her was tall, his eyes cold and calculating. "Who are you?" she demanded, though she already had her suspicions. He stepped forward, the dim light revealing his face. Harold Wright, the last surviving heir to the Wright estate. "Some secrets," he said, his lips curling into a smirk, "are better left buried. Victoria studied herself. Maybe for you, but not for James. And not for Eleanor." Harold's expression darkened. "You don't know what you're dealing with. Then why don't you tell me?" she challenged, keeping her voice steady. For a long moment, Harold simply stared at her, then let out a humorless laugh. "Suit yourself. But don't say I didn't warn you." With that, he turned on his heel and disappeared into the night. Victoria released a shaky breath, realizing her hands were trembling. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. She had come too far to turn back now. Armed with the journal, the letters, and the locket, she knew one thing for certain. The truth about the Wright family would no longer remain hidden. No matter the cost, she would see justice done, even if it meant putting herself in danger.